Hello, passengers, and welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with service to Cleveland. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that this week, in order to lower flight prices, we're going to be cramming 8 people in a row without adding any seats. The savings? No ad breaks.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How you boys doing today?
God, imagine living in Cleveland. It's the summer of 2003. You've just drafted LeBron James, and the Drew Carey show is still on the air. Like, is there any better time in American history than Cleveland circa 03?
Oh my gosh. Rich, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that we're finally touching down into Johnny Manziel International Airport.
Well, gentlemen, this week we are going to be talking about the Drew Carey show, especially celebrating the fact that it is back on streaming for the first time in a long time. But before we do so, Max, do you mind telling folks who are either frequent flyers and have been with us before or are here for the first time to hear more about Drew?
You can find the show on Plex and Zumu. It's a Zumu Zoo original.
Oh, I just got rid of my Floorbow subscription.
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes from wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
All right, Rich, what is your question of the week?
Well, I mean, okay, so understanding Drew Carey right now means appreciating his transition to game show host, and also, you know, what we know about him going to a Fish concert and taking hard drugs. we're bringing up all the controversies this week. I want to know, what celebrity do you want to see make that transition to game show host? Who do you think would do either a great job or a hilarious job, like a can't miss TV kind of job?
All right, mine is a journey, so I'm going to save it to last, and that's called a tease. Max, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Just first off, if you have not read Drew Carey's memoir, Dirty Jokes and Beer, Stories of the Unrefined, it is a wild read. My dad had this on book on tape and used to play it in the car when I was way too young to listen to this. Drew Carey is so much more like Bob Saget-esque than I think people realize these days. Get the audio tape. Drew does it himself. There's some wild shit in there. I need to go with someone who I think right now is way too big to move to the game show sphere, but has such a passion for retro pop culture and that type of media, and also has the perfect amount of disdain for the contestants that is required of all of our best game show hosts in pop culture history, and that is John Mulaney. I need that man with the skinniest Bob Barker microphone who is just showing such loathing for the contestants in the way that all of our best do. The Barkers, the Alex Trebeks, the Pat Sajaks, just really letting them know that I do not necessarily need you here. You need me here. I am better than you. Now play the game.
I'm going a little bit of the opposite route. Still sticking with SNL, though. I got to go Tracy Morgan hosting anything. I think do we need to get really complex with this game show? Absolutely not. But I want to see Tracy Morgan just absolutely biff a game show.
I think what you're pitching is a game show that is ever changing in real time. The game show equivalent of Calvin Ball from Calvin and Hobbes.
I would watch that, though. That's the only way you're getting me to watch a game show right now.
All right, gentlemen. It's not exactly a game show, but what if I told you we come to this place for magic? Dazzling images on a huge silver screen, sounds that I can feel. I am pitching to both of you that we bring back Project Greenlight on HBO, hosted by Nicole Kidman, the star.
A game show?
Yeah, the star of the AMC advertisement that we have all grown to love.
That's it. That's her
the
credits.
one.
That's it. That's the only thing that she's known for.
Oh, man.
Screw Moulin Rouge.
There's an article that came out this week, and I'm sorry to interject on this, Jeff, but there's an article that came out this week talking about Billy Joel's like memoir, documentary that just came out. And the way that they describe Billy Joel is the Vienna singer. I'm like, yes, Billy Joel, the person who got famous from Vienna.
Jeff said, screw her, Oscar. She makes the commercial before the movie that makes me laugh and everyone claps.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I want Nicole Kidman starring in Project Greenlight. Like, first of all, I want Project Greenlight back. It's an amazing type of show that I think we're missing on TV right now. But also the grace, the gravitas that Nicole could bring to that show. And if she, in the finale, wears the dress that everyone goes nuts about, 100%, you're going to get all of the viewers in that moment in time.
And I think she has the time. She's in approximately 79 different miniseries on streamers right now, so I think that she can work this in.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for your wonderful question of the week.
You guys had very thoughtful answers. I said Tracy Morgan.
In anything.
In anything, yeah. No specific game show. It's ever-changing.
Okay, but pick a game show.
Yeah.
Well, it would be very complex for him to grasp. I feel like Deal or No Deal Island would really throw him off.
Deal or No Deal Island, or I would literally kill someone to watch him on Wipeout. Like, I think that would be the most insane show for him to be on ever.
As a contestant.
Yeah, both. He does a run at the end of every episode. Like, that's just in his contract.
Oh, God.
Well, Rich, thank you for that lovely and thoughtful question. Let's talk a little bit more about the Drew Carey Show. And we're going to start off with a quick synopsis. A sitcom about Drew's personal and professional life. That's it.
All right.
Thanks, IMDb. But before we dive too deep into the personal and professional life of Drew, Max, can you tell us a little bit more about how this show got made?
Today, we are talking about the pilot of The Drew Carey Show, which eventually aired on September 13th, 1995 on ABC. We're talking about the show's creators, Drew Carey and Bruce Helford, a little bit more. After serving in the Marines, Carey returned home to Cleveland, where he tried his hand at open mic nights at the suggestion of a friend working as a local DJ who Carey helped write jokes for. He became the MC for the Cleveland Comedy Club after winning their open mic contest, and eventually found his way onto Star Search and earned the elusive seat on the couch after his performance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in 1991. His debut special, Human Cartoon, premiered on Showtime in 1994. Roles in TV and film followed for Carey, including an appearance in Coneheads and the short-lived NBC sitcom The Good Life. Bruce Helford served as a writer on The Good Life and brought Carey on as a consultant for another project called Someone Like Me at NBC. After the latter's cancellation, the two teamed up to develop a sitcom project of their own, a star vehicle for Carey. The show would be a fictionalized version of Carey's life, one he described as how things would be if he simply moved back to Cleveland and never pursued comedy. The original pilot was called The Drew F. Carey Show. You figure out what the F stands for. But when ABC decided to place the show at a 7:30 time slot, the duo was forced to censor the language and cut several jokes, much to the frustration of Carey, who wanted the show to be more reflective of his own stand-up material. Today's pilot is directed by the legendary Michael Lassack with 200 different shows to his resume, including 16 different sitcom pilots.
Well,
wow. I also just looked up Drew Carey's middle name, and it's Allison, which wasn't expecting that.
The F is silent. But
it feels like this is just like such a huge crossover among every star vehicle for stand-up comedians from this time, where it's just like it's a constant fight between what they actually find funny and what network executives like.
Well,
and
think about the time that this came up, right? We're talking about the late 90s. Network execs are looking at something like Everybody Loves Raymond and being like, holy shit, there's so much money. We're towards the end of Seinfeld and thinking, wow, there's so much money. We're looking at this star in Drew Carey and saying, we should give it a shot, right? Like we need something to fill this time slot, especially at ABC at this point in time. Let's find something.
Did you guys ever go to Disney's Hollywood Studios? I think it was called MGM Studios previously, back in the 90s.
Hell yeah.
Never went to Disney World? Okay. So for some reason, they made like the lunch commissary ABC Studios themed. Like it was the part of the park that for some reason they made like ABC themed, and there was so much Drew Carey show stuff in this commissary. Like so many posters, not like a meet and greet. Like you couldn't get a Drew Carey autograph. There was no one playing Drew Carey at the park.
Oh, you mean they didn't hold him hostage in Orlando?
There were like so many pictures of this cast in the ABC themed luncheonette that you would go to at this one park, and it feels like it's crazy that this show did capture such a part of the zeitgeist in that way. You're talking about a show that a 6th grade Max once petitioned his parents to push his bedtime back by 30 minutes so that he could watch the Drew Carey show.
Oh my god!
Look, if I had known that Drew Carey, Ryan Stiles, Diedrich Bader, and Krista Miller would still be such a large part of my life at this point, I would have said absolutely when I was 8 years old, because that's I don't know. There's something about this cast that just like it's all stars on it. I don't get it.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about this cast and our first introduction to this cast, because rather than talk beat by beat, which is that mark it off on your bingo cards. I would love to talk a little bit more about some specific themes of this pilot and the role. And Max, this question specifically for you. How do you think this cold open does in setting the tone of what we are going to be experiencing on this show? Because it's definitely a lot.
Yeah, I think it tells you right now that this is essentially going to be Drew stand-up. It's very presentational dialogue. This is not a show for the acting. This is not a show for the theater. These are not people with long-standing Broadway chops being slotted into a sitcom performance. These are comics, and they're going to talk very off-the-cuff like comics. They're going to almost kind of address you as the audience in their conversations, and there is just this sort of like guys being guys, tete-a-tete amongst them, where it's going to be, it's quick snaps, it's little digs, it's asides, and I think they're very clear in setting up what the style of humor is early on.
Yeah. The entirety of this cold open is just like they threw out one topic and just kind of let them go off on it. And happy Pride. What guys do you think are hot? This is a great way to kick off this month.
Well, I mean, Rich, what guys do you think are hot is literally in my notes of a question to ask you too. So feel free to pick one, or you can wait and throw it out as something later.
Yeah, that's my game of the week, actually, so don't steal that.
I mean, I don't
It's just hot or not.
Yeah. I'm curious for you too, because Max, you sort of hinted towards it. We're not talking about these Oscar-winning actors in this first scene. We are talking about a joke that is maybe a little bit more of a low bar for entry. But what do we think about the chemistry amongst these three friends that are our first introduction to our main characters? Because I found it relatively like honest, delightful, and like conversation I would probably have at a bar if I was with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they do a good job establishing that all three of these people are very much on the same tier, that they have pretty mild ambitions. They're very much the same status, and this is the show for regular people. Like I know that sounds very simple to put it, but this is not highfalutin. This is just going to be simple conversations. They capture the essence of like water cooler talk very, very well. And I think that it's this idea of like, it's low ambition, it's hapless jobs, it's this reprieve, and when you get done for the day and you can hang with your friends, they're all supportive in each other's careers, even though no one is necessarily soaring up the corporate ladder. It's a very nice show that is very cutting in its humor. It's like everyone is nice, everyone's supportive, but they're also going to like rip on each other and rip on other people. That does cause some problems, I think, in this pilot, looking back on it 30 years later. But yeah, I think it's just nice to see like an even playing field.
So while we meet two of Drew's friends in this first scene, I want to talk about this third friend, this third almost main character that joins, and that is Kate O'Brien, played by Krista Miller. And I would love to ask you too, do you think this pilot works if we don't have Krista Miller in it? Because she brings such a different energy, and it allows, by having this character, it allows for a different set of jokes to be given and said throughout this pilot. And I almost want to give ahead of time my MVP of this pilot to Krista Miller for her performance as Kate, but I'm curious for you two.
I feel like they kind of don't figure her character out well enough. Like, she's very put together. I mean, she's gorgeous. Like, we'll get that clear. Who do I think is hot? Krista Miller. And the way that she is kind of fumbling a lot of parts of her life, or like that she's not very put together or anything like that, I feel like they could have like dressed her down a little bit to make her seem like less of like a platonic heartthrob for the entirety of the rest of the cast. Like the way that Lewis and Oswald are kind of like schlubby. Drew doesn't really have any work ambition. It's just like not getting fired. That's like the entirety of it. But for her to like be constantly making like stupid mistakes is like, it's a good foil, and it's like, it makes good joke material, but not like a fully thought out character, it seems, yet.
To me, it feels so indicative of a woman written by men in like a 90s sitcom. She's gorgeous. She's the apple of everyone's eye. She drinks beer. She shoots pool.
Right.
She hangs out with the dudes. She's okay with her best friends smelling her to help her get a sense of how to do her first day on the job. And it feels a little bit caricature-ish looking back on it. She knocks out the material she is given, and I want to say that.
Yeah.
Everyone on this show, whether or not you think the material holds up, whether or not it's something that you want to keep diving into, they knock out what they are given. And I think that is a testament to be able to take something that is very much taking shape, that is not necessarily the most fleshed out, that is not necessarily the most concrete, but to get so much juice out of it. Everyone absolutely squeezes the material that they're given for all it's worth. But I do think it's figuring out, is that material there and like worthy and suiting of what they're bringing to the table?
Right.
So I have an interesting question for you, and we have this in our notes, of the idea of, we talk about why is this day different than every other day a ton of the time, right? Like we ask that. And this seems to be the lowest stakes pilot we have done in maybe ever. There's not much different today. Drew,
the difference is meeting Mimi. That's the big.
Yeah,
that's the big
difference.
change. Yeah,
but like the why is today different? Drew has to do his job. Like that is what happens.
I'm shade smoking, like looking over my notes like it's the fucking Zodiac here, trying to figure out why it's today different.
I mean, I think it's literally just Drew gets an adversary that stays with him the entirety of the show. I don't think there's anything. There's not super high stakes with Kate getting a job. There's almost no stakes with Lewis and Oswald, like, at all. Drew is just like not particularly enjoyed by his coworkers and is asked to hire someone. But I really do think that the joke fodder that is having Mimi on the cast, which I can't imagine having that role for so many years, where you're just gonna that they're gonna ask you to do your makeup completely crazy, and you're gonna have to be a bitch the entire series.
So let's get a little bit more to the concept of Mimi, because we talked a little bit about how Kate's character might not be that fleshed out, might not be that different. It is almost stereotypical or caricature of men writing for a woman in the 90s. Mimi is very, very different from the Gen Z makeup that she has in 2000.
What now?
Or whatever. There's way too much eyeshadow, and we can talk about that on another podcast. But the idea of that, the really just saying whatever comes to mind sort of mindset and being confrontational from the very first moment that you meet this character. Were you entranced by them? Did you find them to be an interesting, heel almost in the sense of this pilot?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you have someone who cuts through the aloofness immediately, someone who challenges the worldview so well and so clearly, and who is antagonistic. The idea of this show being about schlubs in Ohio who drink beer and have like menial jobs, and we get an adversary in the pilot is very funny to me. That like we create just a true foil off the bat.
Right. Yeah. And she kind of has a difficult job of taking the intensity of this pilot from like a 2 to a 10, because there is almost nothing that is required of the rest of the cast to really like throw a bunch of stakes in, throw any drama in. But I mean, I think the whole thing is like, how do we get someone for Drew to clown on to take up a good like 8 minutes of this pilot?
Yeah, it is such a great. Not only do we have this wonderful interview scene that immediately goes off the rails, right? It is immediately, it is that moment where you're like, oh, I see what Kathy Keeney did when they were, trying out for the show. This is the monologue piece. They basically just did this entire monologue by themselves, probably punched a hole in the wall during the monologue, and then got the job immediately. Because I don't know as a casting or talent director how I couldn't pick her.
Did you guys know Kathy Kinney is in 33 episodes of The Secret Life of the American Teenager?
I did not know that.
Welcome
I
back.
have watched all of one episode of that show.
She wasn't in that one. So.
Yeah, she wasn't in that one, so it's a blind spot to us.
Might have changed my review of it.
Series regular.
Yeah. I mean, it is so interesting to see her in that interview scene and then immediately see the other side and the continuing antagonist with the idea of, hey, we have this bar that seemed like a safe place at the beginning of the show, and immediately it is no longer a safe place. I can tell you guys, having been to Cleveland a few times, there's more than the Warsaw Tavern. But somehow everyone is ending up there, and we should expect to be ending up there.
Yeah, she ends up in every single one of Drew's like safe spaces except for his own home.
Could you imagine if she showed up in his home and like just a scene and it was never meant?
Stay tuned for episode 2.
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about the idea of how this show sort of concludes, right? It's interesting because Drew's house, I want to talk about this in a little bit more depth, does not make sense to me. And I'm going to talk about this in wait a minute moments as well.
I love that. I can't wait to hear this.
I'm going to talk about it in wait a minute moments as well, but like,
This is Architectural Digest with Geoff Kerbis.
Talk about a home where if you were to tell me, hey, what would Drew Carey be doing while it's raining in Cleveland? I could have had 1,000 guesses and would not have guessed making hot cocoa and then getting screamed at for not being a good friend because he has no pie, right? Like that is the idea of that is so insane. But at the same time, I think it's sort of the simple charm of that makes me enjoy parts of this pilot a lot more, because it's like, oh, this is just dumb. This is just dumb and funny. And I want to see these visual gags, or like the name gags of having one of the characters literally be named Oswald Lee Harvey.
I love that. I love that bit.
Which is just like so goddamn funny, but also hell yeah. I'm curious for you two, as far as some of these ending beats that we have, but also speaking on the concept of Drew Carey's house.
I think you start getting a little bit of the taste of Kate's flair near the end, where it's like they're trying to just like they're about on the precipice of actually hiring someone for this job at Drew's work, and Kate comes in for an interview. And he's like, "Do you have any skills that you think are better than Natalie's?" And she says, "I could beat the crap out of her." And I'm like, "Okay, this is like let's see, let's take the rings off. Let's see, let's see a little bit of this, a little bit more." But also, like, you get you start to get like some people like really finding their tone with jokes near the end of this, where Lewis has the do you know how many forms you have to fill out if you sexually harass someone? And then Lewis responds with 8. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting this. Like this is starting to come around. It like I think if there was a little bit more to the first like 20 minutes of this, I would say like, oh yeah, this is like they're flowing now.
There's a lot of specificity in how we do jokes in this show, and sometimes they don't even have to do with the flow of the episode in itself. It's the idea of, yeah, we're making hot cocoa on the stove. It's Drew going out to shoot pool outside on a table covered in dead leaves in a raincoat and matching hat. Dude is going out there looking like Paddington Bear and shooting some stick in his backyard. Even the second Warsaw scene of the guy who just calls out Drew for eating a cheeseburger, it feels like this very like 90s American humor of like, oh, you know, that's bad for you. It's going to kill you. You got to go on a low-fat diet. But they just sort of throw these lines out at you. It's a lot of just like painting against the wall and seeing what sticks and throwing out these jokes. This is taking the like Seinfeld show about nothing premise and putting it into a much more all-American framework, I feel like.
It kind of, to piggyback on that, Max, it feels like almost that there's not enough Drew Carey in this show, and it sounds like he's just kind of spitting out lines from his writing room that aren't necessarily like, it sounds like he's going from telling stand-up jokes to all of a sudden reading sitcom lines and not. Well,
I think that's a thing that we see in a lot of these types of shows, where it's Mulaney, but Everyone Loves Raymond as well has a lot of this, where it's bits that are specifically recycled from their material, and it's this introduction of a comic to a mass audience. It's this idea of, you may know Drew Carey from his appearances on Letterman and Carson. You may have seen him on tour. You may have seen his special on Showtime. But this is ABC.
Right.
And this is introducing to the biggest audience imaginable. And so we do need to pepper in the stand-up, what they are about, giving you that sense. And so there's so many bits, from the carpool to the Warsaw conversations to the interview process, where it, like I said, it feels like Drew is just talking directly to you, the audience, with his old material.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thought experiment to go through the challenge of being in a writing room and trying to come up with an idea for an episode, maybe a few, but then being told explicitly, hey, we need to put in these jokes that Drew has in his act, and almost take away the idea of like, hey, I know you really like that joke that you had for the Warsaw Tavern. We're going to have to save that. And probably as a writing team, it takes a lot of time to finally like be through your stand-up comedian's material to the point where you're like, finally, I can fucking write my own jokes. And
Well, and this one is written by Carey and Helford. They wrote this pilot as well together. And not only having to take his material, but then having to censor it for that 7:30 mainstream network audience. It's not even like you could just pop in Drew Carey's material. It's like doing a corporate gig. Like, you could only do the PG rated stuff on here. Like, you have to cut out explicit references that we can't get the rights for. And you have to tone it down because the censorship says you can't do this before 9 o'clock and we're putting you at 7:30. And so it's like you're putting a filter on a filter on a filter to finally get this script.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, that is our pilot, but I want to talk about things that we love, things that we want to give a little bit more shine from this pilot that you enjoyed that maybe we didn't discuss. And Rich, you're nodding your head. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. There is a moment where I could see a little shining glimpse of like what the show would eventually come to be, where it's a little Gary Shandling show. It's a little, but it's like a fourth wall break where he's like, he's talking to the gang and he's like, hey, who drank all the generic non-branded beer, holding up like a stage bottle of beer. And I'm like, that is what people are going to come back to see. It is in an entire show that doesn't feel like his stand-up yet. That is like, it kind of feels like there's like, it's like a comedy boxing match. And this is like the first round where they're just like feeling each other out. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a comedian trapped in the sitcom. If that's the route you guys want to go with this, do it. But yeah, that moment in particular, I laughed really hard. It was a really good, like, just glimmer of what it could be.
Max?
I bet the beer at Warsaw Tavern is so cold.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
I have never wanted to drink at a fictional sitcom bar more than Warsaw Tavern.
Yes.
It looks so up my alley, from the jukebox to the mugs of beer. Thought I was going to drink beer in mugs a lot more in my adult life. That's a disappointment. I mean, it shows what I get.
I'll buy
from
mugs
Simpsons
right now.
fan. The cheeseburger looks great. Fuck that guy for calling out Drew on his dining habits. I want to hang out at Warsaw so bad, and it looks like just such an enjoyable third space that this show is going to go back to time and time again.
Yep.
Yeah, and what I'll say as far as things that I loved the supporting cast in this pilot. From Diedrich Bader to Krista Miller to Ryan Stiles to Kathy Keeney.
To Ian Gomez.
Yeah, everyone did their role, and they did it to the best of their ability no matter what was written. And that is, especially when you have a show that is focused on, from the network perspective of, oh, we need to give Drew Carey his own show, the supporting cast becomes even more critical if that person is not a stage actor. And I think they all knocked it out of the park, considering what they were given. Let's talk about wait a minute moments, and I'm going to just kick us off right now. Let's talk about pool table care, because boy, oh boy, when I saw that pool table outside with the leaves, I wrote in my notes, if we do not bring this up again, I'm going to be upset. Like, I am going to be actually upset. So by the end of the pilot, when we see Drew playing pool outside in his best Paddington cosplay, oh God, we lost Rich. That's
we actually lost Rich.
I mean, I genuinely was just like, this is insane. Like, the entire concept. So when I say Drew Carey's house does not make sense, I think even Pee Wee Herman would be upset with how Drew Carey's house is built, set up for friends to do activities. That is my rant. Max, what are your wait a minute moments?
Look, I'm just gonna call it what it is. The women in this show are not written well from a pilot perspective. The use of Mimi, while she has teeth and while she punches back, is just a barrage of surface level insults about her personality, about her looks, about her makeup. It does feel like Kate is just this like perfect dreamed up guy's girl. And I think that you have to call it like it is. And they do punch back. Both those characters do have teeth of their own, but it just felt like the humor against them was so directed at them, and it was so men punching down at women in their humor that it does take you out of it a little bit. And I do hope that that's something that they figure out as the show goes on, how to make them a little bit more rounded as characters.
Because that's such a great point. And honestly, like, I think what they could have done was look more towards a pretty shining example of what that character could be, or the character, or any female character goes in that direction, from the number one show on TV at that time, which is Elaine Bennis. What they're missing is Elaine. And because if you are going to trade barbs, if you are going to take jabs at the female characters on the show, like, have them give them some sharp teeth. Like, Elaine will always fight back. No one takes cheap shots at Elaine.
Yeah, and Rich, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that when we talk about, like, hey, the writing is like, it's because I think the three of us have, as you know, coming up on nearly 150 episodes of this podcast, we've seen great writing in pilots that have been made earlier than this show. We've seen great writing for pilots afterwards, and there's sort of the standard that's been kept in mind. And when we talk about would we watch more of this show, we keep that in mind of like, hey, does this podcast age well, or this pilot age well in this sense? And it's something that is worth a thought of, like, hey, do I want to watch a little bit of a stale concept if I continue watching the show, or what point does that stop? And they say, oh shit, we need to actually like write a woman like a woman would act, and not like a guy would dream a woman would act.
Exactly. For my wait a minute moment, because Max took the best one, I think. Is that from?
Well, you left for most of Jeff's.
Yeah, exactly. You were so upset about my pool table talk.
I had to go.
You just departed.
I had to go. I'm sorry you felt that way, Jeff. I have to say, from a writing perspective, there needs to be more ever presence of the characters. I think there are too few scenes in this show. And what that means is that every scene goes on for about a minute or two too long. And so what you could have done was splice in a little bit of Lewis and Oswald at work. You could have, like, it doesn't have to be just about Drew. But it just felt like there were just like more story plots missing, where it's like, I think it was just like we could have seen more of the ensemble, if that makes sense.
I mean, Rich, we barely had an A plot, so like for you to expect a B, C, or D plot,
but that's also fine. Like if it is a chemistry pilot, if it is a chemistry show where you're like here, and that 70s show is a great example. We just did it last week. That is a chemistry pilot. There is almost no plot whatsoever in that first episode. It feels very dazed and confused. We brought that up multiple times during that episode. It just felt like you can get away with not having that strong of a plot, but it has to be unmissable chemistry from the cast.
Well, we do have one more question, gentlemen, and that is an in-flight question. This week's in-flight question comes to us from Instagram, specifically from Michelle from Cleveland, Ohio.
Ooh.
And Michelle has asked, your brand new employee, Mimi Bobek, has arrived at the TV Pilot's License studio for her first day. What is her job? So maybe Mimi has hired herself. Maybe we have chosen to hire Mimi. What are we having her do on this podcast? Rich?
I'm giving it a persuasive answer. And here's what I want everyone listening to this right now to do. Go follow us on TikTok, because Mimi Bobek is going to be replying to all the people who leave bad faith comments to us on social media, which has been many. What are we doing on TikTok? You are replying to no context podcast like clips that are just like, it's supposed to be goofy, like interjections of like what we talk about. You're leaving bad faith comments on our TikTok. I appreciate the engagement, but you're getting mimied every time.
Max, what about you?
Listen, we need to get the good word out about this show, and we are going to send her out as our official marketing correspondent. She is handling our PR.
Hell yeah.
She is going to every single network in town, and she is sitting them down. She is saying, you're putting this on your platform. You're signing these guys. You're giving them money. And she's going to get in their faces. And I know what these people look like. You're all meek. You can't handle Mimi Bobek in your face. And she's going to finally get us signed.
So I'm following a little bit of what each of you did. And I think that we've all confirmed that Mimi belongs in marketing of some shape or form. And I think that Mimi needs to be our new flyer passer outer in Times Square. Yes, I'm sending Mimi out with 1,000 flyers, and she is going to thrust a flyer into your face saying, listen to the podcast with a QR code on it. And make sure that you download Spotify to listen to it specifically.
Yes, everyone's favorite thing about audio mediums, reading.
But Michelle, thank you so much for that in-flight question. You can submit those in-flight questions by checking us out on Instagram. You can also find them on tvpilotslicense.com. And you can also leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text to 213-290-1713 if you have an in-flight question for our next episode. Well, gentlemen, let's talk a little bit more about the history of this show. This show has 9 seasons and 233 episodes.
Yeah, that's a hell of a run.
You want to talk about ratings? My mouth was agape when I saw this. 16.7 million viewers was where this show topped out at. And you might be like, oh, that's number 1. No, that's number 15 on the
Buddy, people love a square face.
Yeah, no, the 90s were nuts. But then eventually by season 9, this show really dwindled down as far as viewership. But that after 9 seasons, how many more jokes about Brad Pitt does Drew Carey have? I'm genuinely asking how many more jokes.
The limit does not exist.
And LeBron James is in town now, as we established up top. They don't need Drew Carey to carry Cleveland on his back anymore.
Too many people were watching the Cleveland Cavaliers instead of watching the Drew Carey show.
What a shame.
The show started its syndication actually after its 4th season. We talked a little bit about how it is now on streaming. I know I watched it on YouTube. You can also find it on Pluto as well as a myriad of other streaming platforms that you would think are made up names. But hey, if you want to be TV Pilots license exclusive streaming platforms, you can give us a call.
Yeah, every name for these streamers sounds like a trash bin idea for what Alf could have been named.
We do enjoy talking about merchandising on this show, and there were 3 that really stood out to me. One was they had a Cleveland Rocks soundtrack, which was the best songs of the show. There was a Matchbox brand partnership where they made a Matchbox car of Drew's Volkswagen Beetle.
Let's go.
Including the flames on the sides. And then finally, there were 2 collector's dolls that were considered Barbie-esque, but not made by Barbie. One was of Drew.
I want that Mimi doll so bad.
Supposedly, they are very valuable and hard to find. And yes, of course, the show is on DVD. I do want to talk about awards really quickly. The show had 28 nominations, including 11 wins. That includes 7 Primetime Emmy noms and an American Choreography Award win because this show was sort of famous for the dance interludes that it would occasionally throw in each season. It also has a Satellite Award, but that is the history of this show. And Rich,
you better believe that Cleveland Rocks music from the Drew Carey show was also in the Singer family car when I was a kid.
I can get those vintage Drew Carey, Drew and Mimi action figures right now, and if someone can prove that they got 100 people to follow this podcast, I will send it to you tomorrow.
All right, there you go.
I will buy this. I'm buying this right now. I don't give a shit. I'm
Rich,
doing it during my game of the week.
All right, it is time for your game of the week. So
don't play with me during my game of the week. All right. So we're going with Cleveland Rocks, the theme song, which we unfortunately did not get to hear during this pilot. And here's a little bit of trivia about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which came to Cleveland about 10 years before this pilot did. Which artist is the only one to be inducted into the Hall of Fame separately 3 times? Is it A, Chris Cornell, B, Eric Clapton, C, Paul McCartney, D, Ronnie James Dio?
I'm going to say Sir Paul McCartney.
I was going to say Sir Paul as well.
It is actually Sir Eric Clapton. He got inducted in the first place for the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page. I can't fucking imagine that concert. Cream in 1993 and then Solo in 2000. Which band brought a cardboard cutout of their absent bandmate for their induction in 1994? Is it A, Led Zeppelin, B, The Who, C, The Grateful Dead, D, Fleetwood Mac?
Ooh, I'm going B on this one. I'm going The Who.
I'm going with Get Me Some Cherry Garcia for Jerry Garcia. Let's go with the Grateful Dead.
It is a cardboard cutout of Jerry Garcia. He did not attend the.
Go.
He did not attend the
plan that at all.
There's a very cute photo of all of them standing with an awards in front of a step and repeat with just a cardboard cutout of him playing guitar, which I thought was very funny. Yeah, but thanks for playing Rich's Game of the Week. I am almost to the final ordering screen.
Well, Rich,
And
thank
if you're a Grateful Dead fan who can prove you got 100 people who subscribe to this podcast, Rich will purchase and send you
The cardboard
that Jerry
cutout.
Garcia cutout.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for that game of the week. Gentlemen, our flight's coming to a land, but before we go, I have 2 questions for each of you. And the first is, very simply, would you watch more of The Drew Carey Show? It's now available on streaming. I found it ad-free on YouTube, so you don't have to worry about that interrupting all of the Drew intake you want. And then the second question is one that we haven't asked in a long time, which is the idea of stand-up comedians getting their own shows. We're starting to see this with especially Netflix really leaning in on giving stand-up comedians their own shows or their own streaming devices that they can be using. Do you think we should lean in a little bit more? Do you think it's been enough time that we have a whole bunch of new voices who deserve to have their ideas heard out? So, Max, while Rich is ordering his Drew and Mimi dolls, I'm going to have you start us off.
This is such an abstract multicam sitcom. This is such an abstract one-liner-esque style of humor. But I am going to say yes, and I'm going to lean into watching a little bit more. I think that there's enough moments in this that genuinely made me laugh, whether it's at the humor or just the absurdity of the situation, that I am intrigued to want to see what goes on. As for that second question, should we continue to see this boom of just stand-ups having their lives and materials turned into shows? That, for me, I'm going to say no. I would actually rather see a comic funnel their own experiences into something wholly original, like having them work with people to flesh it out into something interesting. An example right now is that there is a feature film co-written and starring Nate Bargatze in pre-production right now that is, it's co-written by him, it's starring him, but it's not Nate Bargatze's life. It's a wholly original concept. There's a stacked cast coming up for it, and I want to see you take your style and your personality, but just put it into a whole new lens.
Rich, now that you're done purchasing.
Yeah, it is on the way. It will arrive next week.
Right.
Both Drew and Mimi. I want to make that explicitly clear. So for me, I am, based on the pilot alone, I'm not watching more of this. With a historical lens, understanding that this show got crazy syndication, ABC threw a lot behind it. Drew Carey's the best. He's an incredible host. I got to see him host Lucha Libre in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, which that's my Dan Rather a vocal warm up. Lucha Libre in Los Angeles. I'm not saying yes based on this actual pilot. However, I'm saying yes based on the fact that I know this show gets better and I know that it finds its voice. You get a fucking baller theme song, probably one of the best from the 90s in general. And yeah, when it comes to stand-up comedians getting shows now, I have to point to like a pretty large flop that just came out with Tom Segura's show. It is something that is so far removed from his stand-up, and it's just like, there's like a moment in the trailer where it's like, oh, people are getting these crazy coffees nowadays. And I'm like, it's 1992. Like, is it 1992 again? Is it like it's standing in front of a brick wall, stand-up comedy again? It just like, it's not. This is a very explicit, like, you got to have someone who really knows what they're doing to give them a show at this point.
You know who actually I feel like has like transponded this and done well is Jim Gaffigan, where there's always the essence of Gaffigan, but he's carved out just playing supporting roles in so many projects where you're like, oh, there's the affable Gaffigan-ness about him, but it's never specifically Jim Gaffigan. And like that's a really good lane. Just continue to build strong supporting roles across your resume where people are excited to see you and you bring something specific, but it's not just you.
Even his show when it was on TV Land was wonderful. Like I
They got
very much
23 total episodes.
Yeah, like
We're going to do it next week.
Yeah, watch out. No, for myself, I put this show in a very specific category that we've talked about before, which I call this an in-law show. If my in-laws are around, boy, oh boy, am I going to put on the Drew Carey show.
Yeah.
And I know that everyone's going to have a great time watching it.
Fire up Zoomy.
Yeah. It's downloaded
What
on
the
the
fuck
TV
did you just say to me?
and it's tracking everything I do as we speak. As far as stand-ups getting more shows, I think that we are now in a place, and Rich, you brought up Tom Segura's show. Shane Gillis's new show, Tires, is set to debut fairly soon.
Second season. I highly recommend it. That is actually quite a funny show.
For every good one, there seems to be a bad one or one that we just don't need. And I think that, I sort of point to someone that we forget that they had a stand-up career, but they made something awesome for TV that we have not done on the show yet, which is Donald Glover in Atlanta, where although that was a show that we point to and say, holy shit, how revolutionary that was, at times we look at that show and also say, well, this wasn't really a Donald Glover star vehicle. This was a writing activity for him. And this was him challenging himself with a lot of really far out there ideas that FX really bought into. So if you're going to hire a stand-up to do a show that might be a star vehicle for them, there's something to also say about letting them do what they want to do rather than saying, is that something our sponsors really, really want on television?
Right.
If not, we have to filter them like this pilot probably was. Well, gentlemen, that is our show. And as the plane has landed, I'd like to make sure that folks can find you wherever they want to and wherever you'd like them to find you. So, Rich, where can folks find you?
You can find me chugging beers at the Warsaw Tavern. You can also find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich. You can find original sketch comedy from Max and myself on TikTok at A Dadwagon Comedy.
You can find me sitting next to Rich chugging beers at the Warsaw Tavern and on all things social media at Maxwell Sing.
And you can find me making hot cocoa for Rich and Max when they get back from the Warsaw Tavern. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. If you're looking for the TV Pilot's License, you can listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also watch our smiling faces on YouTube. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do whatever you can. And share this podcast with your friends because we're growing slowly but surely.
That's right.
And y'all can help us out.
There's action figures on the line, people.
Yeah, they are literally on their way.
If you do have questions for the show, feel free to shoot us an email at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voicemail or give us a text at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for some of the stuff that we have coming up. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you soon. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies and your fingers on the dial. And remember, Cleveland rocks.
Ohio, 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 Ohio.